Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 76th part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 76, The Reifu Knowns. Chitose Kazuki burst into the hospital. Worried, anxious, and frightened. Her daughter was badly hurt in a villain attack on the summer training camp and there was no way she was not going to go over there personally and check on her. The instant she heard about the attack, she rushed towards the hospital her daughter was staying at. Okay, so she was in the middle of meeting with the MLA higher-ups, but this was her daughter she was talking about here. She couldn't sit around talking about their plan to take over Japan whilst her daughter was in hospital. Thankfully Redestro was understanding of the situation and allowed her to leave early. Anything she misses she'll be able to catch up on later. Right now, she had to make sure that her daughter was safe. She didn't want to lose her too, not after losing Aikido. It didn't take her long to find the room her daughter was staying in. And upon finding it she burst inside, much to her daughter's surprise. "Mom!" Chiharu said as she sat up in bed, a slightly relieved smile on her face. "Chiharu," Chitose said as she rushed over to her daughter's side. "Are you alright?" "I'm alive, just got a few broken bones, and both legs broken," Chiharu replied. "Don't worry, I was told that Recovery Girl will be paying us a visit to heal us. So I should be up and about soon." Chitose smiled, glad that her daughter was alive. As much as her curious side wanted to know more about the attack, she pushed that side of her aside. Her daughter was involved in this attack, and it clearly left her shaken. She did not want to cause further trauma to her daughter just for the chance to write a smear story against UA. So, she'd leave that subject be. Plus such a story from her would look biased, as her daughter was caught up in the attack. Lucky for her, she wasn't the only reporter working for the MLA. Someone else will just have to write it. "Mother," Chiharu suddenly said quietly. "There's something I need to tell you. It's about Dad." Chitose blinked. "What about him?" she asked curiously. "Well, before I begin, remember, I hated you for over 10 years, Chiharu said. Because of that, I conveniently forgot a few things about him that were shady. She really did forget a few things after her father's death, the good about her mother, and the bad about her father." "Shady?" Chitose inquired, a worried look on her face. Had her husband accidentally revealed the existence of the MLA around her? Chiharu frowned. "Now, I'm not completely sure about this, I was about 2, 3 at the time, and I wish I wasn't about to say this, but I think he may have been having an affair." Chitose looked shocked. "No, that's not possible. Aikido wouldn't do such a thing." "I know, that's why I said I think he may have been having an affair," Chiharu said. "I just hope I'm wrong." Chitose frowned. "I hope you are. Aikido was not the kind of man who would cheat on me." I know, Chiharu said with a frown. "I really wish I didn't have to tell you this, but I've been unfairly harsh on you. And unfairly kind to Aikido. And I can't ignore this anymore." Chitose put an arm around Chiharu's waist. "It's okay. Tell me what you know." Chiharu nodded. "Sometimes, about once a week, on days when Dad didn't have work, the babysitter would arrive late in the evening, and Dad did not leave," she said. "I don't know what they got up to whilst the two were together, I was always sent to bed early those days. But I never saw or heard anything between them, but it was suspicious." Chitose felt a bad taste in her mouth. She knew the woman who was babysitting Chiharu, an old friend of theirs whom she trusted. Was her husband secretly having an affair behind her back? The mere idea horrified her. Do you know if they did anything whilst they were together?" she asked. "I don't know exactly what was going on between them, I was too young at the time to fully understand at the time. But now I think I have an idea of what was going on. But I can't be sure. All I saw was him and the babysitter, talking as they came in, followed by him sending me to bed early," Chiharu replied with a frown. She tried to focus on the memories of her father, specifically those between him and the woman they always brought in to babysit for them. Nothing of those times came back to her. She spent so long suppressing them that she didn't really remember them. What else had she missed or forgotten? I'm sorry, mother, Chihiro cried as she leaned against Chitose. I know he meant so much to us, and I have nothing but good memories about him. But, some of his actions. I don't want to hate him, not now. Chitose quickly embraced her daughter. It's okay, dear, it's okay. I'm still here, she said, holding back her own tears. She was having a crisis of faith. She really did not like what her daughter had told her. Akito was her husband. She loved him, and he loved her back. Well, she thought he did anyway. This information her daughter just provided her horrified her. But, it wasn't reliable. Chihiro was very young at the time, and she could have misinterpreted what she was seeing. And there was a good 10-year gap, so that could have muddled events. But, she wasn't going to ignore this. She was curious at heat. It's why it's her code name. When she heard an interesting rumor, she just had to look into it. And this, sadly, was no exception. The trail was old, yes, but it could still be followed. And she will need to follow it. To prove to both herself and her daughter that her husband wasn't a chatting bastard. After all, Akito was the man who introduced her to the MLA in the first place. He helped her massively in finding her place in the organization. Hell, he introduced her to Redestro. She had to look into this, she had to. Just to prove to both herself and her daughter that he was loyal to them. If she found out that, after all those wonderful memories they had together, he was cheating on her, then that could destroy her and her faith in the MLA. 3 days. 3 long days since the attack on the UACI Joint Summer Camp. That's how long it took for all UA students injured during the attack to fully physically heal from the incident and return to UA. It was a trying time for all of them, students and teachers alike. These kids were under their protection, and twice now they had failed to protect those students from harm. They needed to up their game. Because this was unacceptable. They needed to do their job and focus on protecting them whilst they were still in training. The teachers were all gathered in the staff meeting room. Well, all but one of them. Mandalay, present, Mike said. How's Ragdoll doing? Her recovery is going well, Mandalay replied with a frown. But, we fear that she may have permanent damage to her eyes now. The other teachers all gave her a somber look. This was Ragdoll's first year working at UA, and not even a quarter of the year in she suffered a life-changing injury. Yes, this was expected of all of them, they were heroes and this was the most dangerous career on Earth. But, this was a college of theirs who was hurt. Well, I can say that we all hope for a speedy recovery, Niza said. Ragdoll, as well as the rest of the Pussycats, are now members of this school's little family. And we help and protect our own. Mandalay nodded and smiled. Nizu smiled, of course. Now then, on to more important things, the safety of our students, he said. He wasn't being cold or anything, while Ragdoll's recovery was important, the students' safety was more so. Have all the Hero Course students returned? Ectoplasm nodded. All first, second and third year Hero students are back on campus. All other students have been advised to be cautious during this time. The second and third years will be finishing their summer camps on campus, Cementos added. The first years, however, will be remaining in their dorms for their own safety and to finish recovering from the attack. Especially those from 1A. Improvements are being made to campus security, Powerloader added. By this time next week, UA will be impregnable. Unfortunately, we can't do anything to protect the students when they are off campus. I'm working on panic buttons to be given to all Hero students, but that's about as much as we can do. Nizu nodded. Off campus, that was their real issue. They couldn't really protect them when they were off school grounds. They would have to rely on their fellow heroes to react quickly to any villain attacks on them. At least it's something, Nizu said. The panic buttons should allow heroes to respond to any attack on our students quickly. I just wish we could do more. Hound dog, Kana said. Have you spoken to my students? Because I'm worried about them. They don't speak much and spend most of their time in their rooms. And when I do see them, they're just laying around the dorm, not doing anything. I have, Hound Dog said before he picked up his tablet. Whilst the students of Class 1B were shaken by the attack. Most of them were horrified by the villains continuing to attack them, even when they should not be able to do so. 1A and our 2 dual course students, however, are the ones I'm most worried about. It seems the mere presence of the villain they faced caused damage to their psyche, he explained. They all referred to the villain as a thing, or it. With several of them saying that there was no way that thing was human. The villain apparently looked into their minds and divulged sensitive information about them, information that left most of them shaken. They all also say they have an odd feeling of loss. Like something was taken from them, but they have no idea what it is, but the effect varies. Izumi is the least affected whilst Achiko is the worst affected. Their souls have been damaged, Nizu said with a frown. The villain's presence was more than just terrifying, there were other aspects to it that are invisible. It's called a devouring presence, Horigaramu expanded. I've only faced it once before, and they can only be used by people with powerful psychic quirks, but there have been several reports of people using them. Those who find themselves inside such fields have an overwhelming feeling of dread, fear, and hunger. That something hungry is after them. And those who use them have been described as unholy freaks of nature, she explained. The field does more than terrify you. It claws at your very soul, irreversibly damaging it. And it only gets worse the longer you are inside of it, weakening you until you are unable to fight back, allowing the one emanating the presence to devour your very soul. The teachers all collectively gulped. Devouring over people's souls. Whilst most of them were skeptical about the existence of souls, the fact there were people out there who could apparently eat them was just horrifying. Wait, President Mike said, sounding horrified. There are people out there who can devour souls. Unfortunately, yes, Nizu replied. Thankfully they are very, very rare. Only 4 such individuals have been reported, each one having left a trail of soulless husks behind them. Well, that's creepy, Snipe remarked. Have any of these villains been captured? Vlad King asked. We don't know, Horigaramu replied. They disappeared just as mysteriously as they appeared. Because of this, no one's been able to capture one alive. Now that horrified them. The fact that these soul eaters were never caught and just vanished horrified them. There was no way they could know if they were dead or still out there, somewhere, waiting to strike again. At least they were able to kill one of them before they disappeared. Which was also a problem since one of their students was the one who killed him. Taking a life at such a young age was not something that the students would be able to deal with, especially Izumi. Hound Dog was going to be very busy with her. Is there any way I can treat them? Recovery Girl asked. Nizu shook his head. I'm afraid not. The soul is not a physical object, we can't see it or interact with it. We have no means to repair the damage, only soothe it so that it doesn't spread. I have some specialist equipment being brought in to help them recover, but they'll never fully recover from this. The feeling of missing something Hound Dog said they all have, will stay with them for the rest of their lives. Recovery Girl nodded. I'll do my best to help them then, she said. She knew there were things out there that she couldn't heal, diseases for instance. Her quirk only heals injuries, not illnesses and diseases. And now, the soul was included in that list. I will have to ask what side effects there are to this treatment, she continued. We will be messing around with these children's souls after all. Of course, Horigaramu said. Side effects of soul soothing include extreme awakeness, hyperactivity, and the feeling similar to being high for about half an hour to an hour. Kana almost choked. I'm sorry, what? These kids are going to be high and hyperactive? Shota asked, a shocked look on his face. Power Loader almost had a heart attack. The thought of May, who was already rather hyperactive, being even more hyperactive and high as a kite was not something he wanted to experience. I'm locking down the support lab whilst May is being treated. Good call, Kana said before she turned towards Nizu. Are you sure this is a good idea? No. But it's the only option available to us, Nizu replied. The soul is a very complicated part of us, and very little is known about it. We're lucky a treatment to soothe the soul after such damage exists. The only alternative is to allow this damage to go untreated, which won't do them any good, short or long term. This is the only way to treat them. Don't worry, the effects only last a maximum of an hour. Oh, thank God. Power Loader breathed a sigh of relief. Recovery Girl nodded. The students will be confined to their dorm and be under constant supervision then. But I will give this equipment a once-over, just to be sure it's safe. When will it be arriving? Tomorrow morning, Nizu replied. Good, Recovery Girl said. Once I'm done going over the equipment and making sure it's safe, I'll start treating the students. With any luck, nothing bad should happen whilst they're recovering from their treatment. The next day. I take back everything I said, Recovery Girl said as she stood in One's dorm, Inko standing beside her. Before them was most of Class 1A as well as Mei and Shiharu, all of whom were under the questionable aftereffects of having their souls soothed. Which meant that they were currently high as a kite right now. Achiko was just floating and vibing, looking way too happy. Rikito was making something with way too much sugar. Minoru had basically become a ping pong ball. Su was sitting in the sink. Toru had somehow become visible, and Fumikage was talking in indecipherable slang. And that was just the tame stuff they were doing. Recovery Girl sighed. Honestly, she wished that there was a different way to treat them, but, after some research, she found out that this was the only safe way to treat damage to someone's soul. There was very little information on the subject, mostly debates on whether or not souls exist, with most people believing that they don't exist. Leaving very few people who do, and even fewer who study them. It didn't help that this type of damage was rare. She wasn't even fixing it, just soothing them to prevent further damage. But then again, how do you repair a soul? Okay, Mei has been locked in the study room, Kana said as she walked over to them. There are only pens, paper, and a single light. There is no way she can make anything in there. That's good, Inko said. That last thing we need is for her to make things whilst she said before gesturing towards the chaos 1A had become. In this state. Why is this the only way to treat them? Because no one else is working on treatments to treat a damaged soul, Recovery Girl replied. The method we use today is the only one that exists sadly. I couldn't even find anything that could detect damage to someone's soul. So, this is new territory for me. Inko frowned. She didn't really like it, but if it was the only way to treat them, then it had to do. She didn't like seeing her daughter, or any of the other children acting as if they were high on something, even if they weren't. But better to treat it now than allow it to fester and get worse. At least her daughter wasn't doing anything too crazy. You are, Inko, Eri said. Izumi just vibrated through a wall. Inko blinked. Izumi vibrated through a wall. Eri nodded. Yes. She was leaning against a wall and just, vibrated through it. I think she might be outside of the building now. Kana sighed. I'll go get her. Make sure no one else vibrates through the walls, she said before she turned and left the building. Hopefully, she recovers Izumi before she does something stupid. Later. I would like to apologize for my actions, Izumi said sheepishly. Before her stood a rather annoyed-looking Kana, Toshinori, and Shota, just in case she tried to vibrate through the floor. They were in one of the teacher lounges. Izumi, Kana said. Now, I know that you were under the effects of a medical treatment, but what you just did was not a good idea in the slightest. I wasn't thinking straight, Izumi said. You tried to fly into orbit. Kana said, giving her an I'm disappointed in you look. She what? Toshinori said, having not been told what Izumi had done. How? She's scared of heights. Well, I was high and full of energy at the time, Izumi replied nervously. My brain wasn't really functioning properly. Why did you even give us that treatment anyway? Because it was the only thing we could do to help heal the damage that villain you faced did to you, Toshinori replied. He did more than just damage your bodies. Izumi nodded. I know, that thing damaged our souls and we needed treatment for it. But did the treatment really need to make us feel high? Also, we're hero course students, shouldn't you have been a little bit more prepared for us to get up to mischief? Kana sighed. And I would have, if I had known you could vibrate through walls. I didn't know I could, Izumi said sheepishly. She honestly had no idea how she did that. And where did this ability to fly come from? Kana asked. Strength enhancement now that I can understand, as well as sensing danger and altering an object's speed, even if it is pushing it a bit. But being able to generate a smokescreen, tendrils, as well as the ability to fly is kind of pushing it. And considering Toshinori has been spending a lot of time with you, I'm starting to get a bit worried that you're related to that villain Toshinori asked me to aid in bringing down a few years back. Toshinori started to sweat. This was not good. He's been trying to keep One for All a secret from his fellow teachers, but Kana was starting to get suspicious. And whilst the idea that Izumi was related to All for One was preposterous, it was still worrying. Izumi blinked. You think I'm related to All for One? She said before she quickly covered her mouth, realizing too late how foolish it was to ask that. Kana raised an eyebrow. Okay, so definitely not related to the guy. But still concerned about how you know about him, since Toshinori here went to great lengths to keep that fight hidden dash, she said before she slowly turned towards Toshinori. You gave her One for All, didn't you? Toshinori coughed up blood, whilst Izumi looked shocked. When did her homeroom teacher find out about One for All? Shota meanwhile just looked confused. Pardon? One for All, Kana said. It's a transferable quirk that's been around since the dawn of quirks, and All for One is a villain who was just as old and is also the guy who made it in the first place. And he wants it back. And Toshinori is the current welder of it. Right? Toshinori blinked, looking at her with a shocked look. Who told you all this? He asked, sounding confused. You did, Kana replied. Well, the you on that tape that was in that box you gave me. The box that had a recording of you explaining what One for All is, its story, who that villain you fought was and his relationship with the quirk, and a strand of your hair. You know, that box. Oh, that box, Toshinori said sheepishly. I completely forgot I gave you that. Didn't I tell you not to open that unless we all died, and to destroy it if I survive? Toshinori asked. No, Kana replied. You told me to open it when I was alone and before the fight. Which included instructions to eat the strand of your hair that was also inside the box in case you died, and find someone to pass it on to quickly. Oh, so I did, Toshinori said nervously. How did you forget that? Kana asked before turning towards Izumi. Please tell me he didn't ask you to eat one of his hairs? Izumi gulped. Yes. Shota sighed, walked over to the coffee machine, and started making himself a lot of coffee. He was going to need it to get through this. Kana face-bombed. That's just gross. It's how my master transferred it to me, Toshinori said. So Nana took out a piece of her hair and told you to, and I'm quoting you here, Izumi said before she mimicked All Might's face. Eat this. She said, mimicking All Might's voice as well. Toshinori groaned. And thus is my legacy. Your words, not hers, Durandal remarked. Ha! So that's where you got the idea to use hair from, Izumi said. So, Toshinori, when were you going to tell me that Lady Nagant was there for the fight against All for One? Why was she even there anyway? Toshinori sighed. I bought Kana along for one reason. To kill All for One just in case I and the others all died facing him, he explained. I knew that he could kill all of us. So, just in case that happened, Kana would stay out of the fight, and, just in case we died, she would kill him. He would have hopefully been heavily weakened during the fight, so he would have been vulnerable. She was the trump card, in case everything else failed. And to act as a backup bearer of one for all just in case I died before I could pass it on. Not every day the symbol of peace asks you to help him kill a villain, Kana added. Or give you a box telling you to eat one of your hairs. Why did you even trust me with that? We didn't even know each other back then. Because everyone else who I trusted was either in that battle as well, or too far away to be given a hair in time, Toshinori replied. By giving it to someone I barely knew, on the off chance we all died and he survived, he wouldn't know who I passed it on to. He would have gone after anyone I knew, thinking I passed it on to them. He was actually quite logical with that, Shota said. If you're going into a fight with a villain who you know could kill you, having the means to transfer that quirk away to someone you're not close to so that the villain doesn't get it is a good idea. What isn't a good idea is forgetting that you had this backup plan in the first place. Well, it was a stressful time, Toshinori said nervously. I almost died. So I may have forgotten about it, and a few other things as well. Kana sighed. I should have approached you. I should have approached you after the fight. Why did I decide to go home after that shit and snuggle with my then boyfriend at the time? Why didn't you approach him during the past few months he's been here? Shota asked. Or Izumi, since she has it now. Kana shrugged. I kind of forgot about it as well. It was 6 years ago and a lot happened since then, like getting married, and that incident with that mango. I only just properly remembered it. Plus I didn't know Toshinori had passed it on to her until now. As far as I was concerned, she was a legitimate late bloomer with a complicated quirk that All Might was interested in. Izumi breathed a sigh of relief. That was a good thing to hear, even if finding out that her homeroom teacher also knew about One for All but hadn't told her that she knew was a bit annoying. She could have really helped her master it early. So, you're both at fault here, Durandal said. Great, so, now that everyone in this room is on the same page, we all know about One for All now, can we focus back on how much of an idiot Toshinori has been? How about no, Toshinori said nervously. I know this went very much off topic. But is it really necessary for Shota to be here? No offense, but this is a big secret that can't be just told to anyone. Well, considering erasure is potentially lethal to me now, I think it is a good idea that he knows about it, Izumi replied. The three teachers blinked at her. Come again? Toshinori asked. That villain we faced in the forest did more than try and damage my soul. It tried to eat it, Izumi said shakily. To prevent that from happening, One for All dragged my soul into its core. It's now the only thing keeping me alive. I have no idea what quirk suppressant tech or erasure will do to me now, but I don't want to find out, because they might be dangerous to me, maybe even lethal. Shit, Shota cursed, now really glad she wasn't in his class. He tended to use erasure to silence them when they were getting a bit rowdy. If something as simple as that risked killing this girl, then he was not the best man to have around her. Now I'm really glad I decided it was a bad idea to have me as your homeroom teacher. Toshinori meanwhile had a horrified look on his face. Izumi. I know, it's not great, Izumi said. But it was the only way for me to survive. It means my soul can't be devoured, but, if I ever pass on One for All, it'll probably kill me. Toshinori's face went pale. Oh, Izumi. I am so sorry. I did not mean for this to happen to you. Does your mother know about this? Izumi shook her head. No, not yet. I plan to tell her. Soon. But not yet. I just need to work up the courage to tell her. Just make sure you tell her, Durandal said. She's your mother, she needs to know this. Don't worry, I'll tell her, Izumi said with a nod. Oh God, Kana gasped. Why was I never made aware of this, Toshinori? I know I knew about One for All, but it would have been nice to know that one of my students was the next bearer of it, especially now since her continued survival now counts on her continued possession of said quirk. I'm her homeroom teacher, I need to know these kinds of things. I almost thought she was all for one's daughter for crying out loud, she said. Had I known the truth behind her quirk, I would have been able to provide better advice for her. And why weren't you at the training camp? You came up with that ridiculous training plan for the students but weren't there to help us teach them. Hell, you wanted a member of the top 10 to spar with Izumi, for crying out loud. Wait, that was why Daidoji was there? Izumi gasped. What were you trying to do, kill me? Seriously, All Might, you're supposed to be better than this, Durandal remarked. Seriously. A member of the top 10 sparring with Izumi. That would have most likely broken her instead of helped her. Beating her into a pulp wouldn't help her improve one for all. I have to agree with Kana on this one, Shota added. That revised training plan you sent us to use instead of the original one was bad. Why did you even change it? We know you're getting close to retiring, but you should have at least told us that you were training a successor. We would have helped you. So why change it? All for One still alive, Toshinori replied, noting the horrified look slowly creep up on Kana's face. I don't know how, but he survived our fight. Those Nomu we faced at the USJ and being used by the Children of Blood are more than enough evidence that he's still alive. No one else can put multiple quirks into someone. So, this villain who almost killed you is still alive, Shota said before taking a long sip of coffee. Even more reason why you should have told us this. If this villain is as powerful as you say he is, we should all have been made aware of his existence so we can better prepare for him. If we need to protect our students from him, then we need to know as much about him as we can. I know, but I have to do this, Toshinori said. I failed to kill him before, I can't fail again, I have to bring him down before he can get to Izumi. And I trust you two to help prepare the students to be ready to help keep society together when I either die or retire. But they can't, Kana retorted. You can't expect over 40 children, who are still in their first year of hero school, who don't even have provisional licenses yet, to be able to hold up the peace you held up for over 40 years. It will be years, maybe even decades, before they can even think of doing that. And that's if they live that long. I'm not joking when I say that a quarter of those kids are not going to live to see retirement. This is a dangerous job we're preparing them for. We can't put too much weight onto their shoulders, not after everything they've been through, she said. Please tell me you didn't tell her to become the next symbol of peace? You are, Izumi said nervously. At first yes, but after the USJ he wanted me to be a different symbol. A symbol of hope. That's even worse. Kana groaned. You can't put that kind of weight on someone, especially a child. Izumi is not a fully fledged hero. She can't take on such a burden whilst she's still in training. One day she might be able to stand up and become a symbol like you. But right now, asking her to become the next you will only cause problems for her. But it's alright, Izumi said. I'm okay with it. I can do this. Izumi, I'm sorry, but, as you are now, you are not ready to take on such a burden, Kana said. It'll take a miracle to become a hero like All Might, even with his power at your disposal. You are not ready to carry the same burden as he is. One man can't hold up a society. Izumi frowned. She felt conflicted. On one hand, Toshinori had put a lot of faith in her when he made her his successor. But, what Kana was saying was also true. It was far too soon for her to be focusing on trying to become a symbol like him. Especially in her current mental state. Plus, she was right about the one man who could not hold up society. She's right, Toshinori said with a frown, getting a shocked look from Izumi. I have been a fool. When you told me that there was a chance that All for One was still, I panicked. I thought that I needed to get all the students ready for my retirement as quickly as possible. But now I realized that that wasn't possible. I tried to force you to improve too quickly, and it almost broke you. Plus I wasn't there to help train you, instead, I was on Island, working on a weapon to help bring down All for One. All I did was provide a flawed training plan that only broke the students' trust in the teachers. I should have been there. That way, I would have been able to help you, and perhaps, save you from that thing you fought. I'm sorry. Izumi frowned, not really sure what to say. Yes, Toshinori was admitting his faults, and those things he messed up with should never have happened. But she still admired the man, faults and all. Nothing could change that. He had given her a chance to become a hero and achieve her dream, and she was going to do anything to achieve her dream. You really are messing up a lot, Toshinori, Durandal remarked. Seriously, all the secrecy is starting to weigh both you and Izumi down. Especially now that we know that All for One is still out there. Same with you, Kana. You should not have forgotten that you knew about One for All. It would have saved us a lot of trouble. The two teachers nodded. They had messed up a bit. Kana should have realized Izumi was the next user of One for All sooner. The signs were all there, but she ignored them, and never approached Toshinori about them. Meanwhile, Toshinori was being an idiot of a teacher, trying to make his students improve too quickly to help hold up a society he alone had held up for far too long, and almost broke them in the process. Toshinori, be better at teaching and stop trying to deal with these problems by yourself. Kana, stop forgetting important stuff like this. Izumi, no trying to become a symbol of any kind or trying to restore the peace All Might made if he retires while still in school, Shota said with a very tired look on his face. When he got up this morning he did not expect to be told a big secret such as One for All or find out that two of his colleagues were forgetful fools who forgot very important things that they should not have forgotten in the first place, or that his quirk could kill one of their students. But it happened, and he needed more coffee to deal with it. Well, at least nothing else can be divulged to set off One his homeroom teacher. Well, at least he's no longer telling anyone they can't be a hero without a quirk, Durandal said, fully aware of the chaos his words would cause. Correction, at least one more piece of information could be divulged to set off One his homeroom teacher. Kana looked at Toshinori with almost murderous rage in her eyes, causing the number one hero to shiver. Durandal smirked. After today's clusterfuck, Toshinori needed a little reminding of his previous fuck-ups. I think now's a good time to leave, Shota said before he grabbed Izumi and walked out of the room, Durandal following behind. Whilst he had a very good idea of what Durandal was talking about, and as much as he would like to have a few words about it, he'd leave his co-worker to deal with the number one hero. After all, she's the one who would be most pissed off by the news. Toshinori, Kana said as she glared at him, her rifle extending out of her arm. What exactly did you say to her before you gave her One for All? She asked, pointing her rifle at him for emphasis. If she found out that All Might himself had done even more stupid shit to one of her more vulnerable students. Well, let's just say that he wouldn't be in for a fun time. In the meantime, Izumi was going to tell Shota more about One for All, since it was very much a need-to-know subject for him. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 77. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.